Good morning. Thank you guys for joining us. This is the funding workshop for the upcoming application cycle. We've got some good information to share. And as Jake mentioned, the recording will be available, as will the slides after this morning's presentation. There are 4 folks presenting today. I'm Layla Kral, the administrator. I'll be covering some information on LHTAC. Kevin Kuther, the design manager, will be covering federal aid. Megan Couts, construction engineering LREP manager, will cover the LREP application, and Brian will cover safety. A little of the agenda that I just covered. We'll also have updates on LHTAC, the Leading Idaho Local Bridge Program, and the T2 Center as well. For those who don't know, what is LHTAC? We were created by the legislature in 1994. The Local Highway Technical Assistance Council was created to provide assistance, technical assistance to all local highway jurisdictions in the state. We are governed by a council. The council is made up of 3 highway district commissioners, 3 county commissioners, and 3 elected city officials. Those representatives come from various areas across the state. All of the council members come to us from their respective associations. So the Idaho Association of Highway District, Idaho Association of Counties, and Association of Idaho Cities elect or select their members for our council, and that's who serves on our council. The council meets at least quarterly. 3 of those meetings are in Boise, and then in September, we take one on the road to go visit different parts of the state, different projects, and meet with local officials in that area. This past September, we were in the District 2 Moscow-Lewiston area looking at projects. We serve all local highway jurisdictions with road and bridge responsibility. So cities, highway districts, and then again, those counties with road and bridge responsibility. What we do, quite a bit. We have the funding programs, which is what we'll talk a lot about today, the different programs that we administer. We also administer projects for other programs, manage those projects, such as the ITD Freight Program or Western Federal Lands and the Federal Lands Access Program. Those aren't our programs, but we still manage projects in those. We provide the annual workshops, which what we're doing today. We did take a number of them on the road across the state and then end with the virtual workshop. We have an equipment loan program, the T2 training program, and then again, technical assistance. Everything that we do falls under that umbrella of technical assistance. We want you to know that you can call us with any transportation related questions, and we can most likely find the answer within our staff. We have 25 very diverse staff, different backgrounds, different work experience, and usually we can help find that answer or provide that assistance within our staff. If not, we can leverage our resources and get the answer with one of our partners. A lot of new faces at LHTAC. These are the 8 folks on the screen are all new to LHTAC this calendar year. It was a very unusual year for us. We've not had this amount of staff turnover or changes. Quite a few people left the past 2 years with retirements or different job opportunities, the flexibility of working from home, but we are really happy to report that we're back to full staff. We have no job postings on our website, and that's the first time in over 2 years. So really excited about all the new folks, and hopefully you have the opportunity to work with them over the next few years. What else is new? Obviously, there's been a lot of funding updates and changes over this past year. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, or IIJA, was signed last year. That's the federal transportation bill that funds the federal aid programs for the next 5 years. We were really excited about it. It had an increase to all of our federal programs, which you'll hear about from the other presenters as we move forward. There's also dedicated bridge funds, and that's the first time we've had money dedicated towards bridges in the last 3 bills. So an increase to bridge funding with that. Also with the new bill, the new Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, there are much more federal competitive grants, discretionary grants that all the locals can apply for and compete against locals from across the country. We have been sharing information as it becomes available and the new programs roll out from our website and from our email. So here's the first plug to subscribe to our emails to get that information. We will also help if you have questions on any of those programs. We have staff that listens to all of the webinars that are provided from Federal Highway. So somebody in our office can provide assistance to you for those programs. At the state level, Big increases for all of the locals. First is the sales tax funding. 2 years ago, the legislature passed a bill that provides the first 4.5% of sales tax to transportation projects. Of that money, the first 80 million is dedicated towards ITD for their bonding program, but anything above that 80 million is distributed to the local agencies through the highway distribution account. The projection when that bill was passed is it would be about $8 to $12 million distributed to the 287 local entities. The first year, the amount was about $30 million. And again, that was distributed in your July fourth quarter payment to all the local jurisdictions. Following that, this past year, the Governor Little requested $200 million in the Leading Idaho program as transportation maintenance money. That bill was passed as well, split 60% to the Idaho Transportation Department and 40% to the local jurisdictions. Again, that money is distributed through the highway distribution account formula and received in the fourth quarter payment. Your fourth quarter payment then had the original highway distribution account money, the House Bill 312 account gas tax increase money, the sales tax distribution, and the Leading Idaho maintenance money. So really large payment in July. We are hopeful and optimistic that once again, that Leading Idaho maintenance money will be requested through the surplus funds for the state. Also, the governor requested up to $200 million to fix the local bridge system. And really that was dedicated towards bridges in poor condition or posted for load. That has established the Leading Idaho Local Bridge Program, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And with all these changes, there's also some changes to the annual road and street financial report, which I will cover as well. Why bridges? I know that all of you on the call have heard us talk about the condition of bridges and the state of the local bridges in the state of Idaho. There are almost 2,500 locally owned bridges. Nearly half of those are 50 years old or older, which is the design life for those bridges. So we've been educating folks as much as we can that we were nearing a crisis. We only have about $9 million, previous transportation bills, about $9 million a year in federal funds for local bridges. And we were never going to be able to tackle 1,200 local bridges with that money. Further, just using that pie chart, you can see that 6% of the local bridges are in poor condition. And those are the bridges that we're tackling with the Leading Idaho Local Bridge Program. However, the next big chunk of bridges in fair condition, that's 69%, they're just one step above poor. And so tackling the poor and posted is important, but not ignoring where we are or the information that we're receiving and looking down is important as well. When the governor first asked us for an estimate of the local bridge needs, we went to the ITD list of bridges and pulled up the poor and posted bridges across the state. Our estimate in the spring of 21 was about $600 million to address those bridges. Our most recent estimate's about $690 million, and we're optimistic with that number. We'll see how we did on our estimating as we move forward. Our estimate was just based off of straight bridge data, so length and width of bridges. No investigation or site visits were performed, so it really was purely an estimate based off the paper. So again, with the $200 million that the governor requested and the legislature passed, we stood up the Leading Idaho Local Bridge Program. The goal for the money is to fix bridges in poor condition or posted for load. To get on that list, we use the ITD inspection reports and inspection list. For those who may not be aware, ITD is responsible for managing the inspections. They are required to inspect every bridge over 20 feet in the state, and they maintain that list. So when we were tasked with this, we went to the proven data of the information from the inspection reports and load postings. So it wasn't my opinion or anyone else at LHTAC's opinion of what bridges qualified for the program. We used the posted and published data. The goal for the program is to tackle 1/3 of that backlog of bridges in poor condition or posted for load. The program is administered by LHTAC, and like all of our other programs, the funding and the awards are through an application process. We still want to know what your priorities are through that application. The eligibility, again, bridges in poor condition or posted for load or closed. There were a few bridges that were closed as well. With that, we started with 428 bridges. And once we evaluated them some more, we realized that quite a few bridges were already in the federal aid program. So we removed those from the eligibility of the state funding, not wanting to mix the state and federal money. The bridges in federal aid will move forward in the federal aid program. Also, the council chose to limit the number of applications, and that was in an effort to accelerate the timing of the program. Instead of 400 applications, we limited the applications that could be submitted to half of the eligible bridges. So if an agency had 20 eligible bridges in poor or posted condition, they could submit applications for 10 of those. With that, 221 applications were received. The council has already approved 2 rounds of funding. Round 1 had 5 projects that were construction ready. We had said from the beginning that if your project was construction ready and you had design plans, you would be funded, whether you were ranked number 1 or number 200. All in all, we had 5 of those projects, and those projects are under construction now. 18 projects were identified as repairs. We feel a fiscal responsibility to spend this money wisely. And if that means spending $100,000 on a repair rather than $2 or $3 million for replacement, that was the responsible thing to do. So 18 projects have been identified in the repair category. 49 bridges were put in the testing and analysis group. This is an unknown group for us. We're not sure exactly what those bridges need. Some of them may just need some further testing. Some of them may end up in the repair category and some may end up in the replacement category. But we needed a consultant to help work with ITD to determine what was needed for those 49 bridges. And then in round 1, there were 34 full replacement projects. Almost all of those were single spans, a lot of canal projects, simple design and simple construction projects. That was round 1. In September, council approved round 2 of the funding. That included 2 removals where the local agency has asked for the bridge to be removed and closed. 1 project that was a repair that we missed for the round 1, and then 21 full replacement projects. The full replacement projects in round 2 are the most complicated projects that were high ranking in the program. Multiple spans, a lot of river crossings, more difficult or challenging environmental, geotechnical, and tribal concerns. And you can see the difference of the price tag for the round 1 replacements and the round 2, and that is shown in that cost for the round 2. All in all, the council has obligated over $102 million of the funding for rounds 1 and 2. The speediness of how we've done this is something we're really proud of. The bill for this was passed and signed by the governor in March. And by the middle of September, the $102 million was obligated for projects. At this point, council has chosen to pause before awarding the 3rd round. And that is because of the unknowns and the estimates based on round 1 and 2 funding. What's next? The staff is in the middle of onboarding the consultants. Environmental and geotechnical consultants are already out doing investigation on a number of sites. The staff needs to determine the direction for the testing and analysis group. Again, some of these projects in that 49 may end up as repairs, some may end up as replacements, and not knowing what the cost of those are, what direction those are, leaves us about $70 million of unknowns if all 49 of those end up as full replacements. Further, 91 bridges were submitted, applications were submitted, but are not in a funding group right now. The estimated cost for those is $160 million. And then moving beyond the 221 applications we received, 183 bridges were not submitted, and the estimated cost for those is $360 million. Again, the goal is to make sure if a project gets funding that we are able to make it through construction. And so wanting to wait and see what the actual estimates and construction awards are for round 1 and 2 are important before we can move forward and start awarding round 3. However, if more money is available this year through the legislature, we will just continue awarding projects down the list. And so we can move forward with rounds 3 and 4 if funding becomes available.
Does ITD inspect private bridges over 25 feet as well?
Yeah, I think Kevin speaking up in the background, I believe their mandate is any bridge that carries a public roadway. Okay, moving on to the annual road and street finance report. A lot of new money means some changes to the reporting. First up is line 16, all other state receipts or transfers. We asked that ITD add information on the sales tax distribution and the leading Idaho revenues to make it clear this is the line you would report those fourth quarter funds. Further, the Legislative Services Office asked ITD and the Controller's Office to make some changes on line 18, the Secure Rural Schools funding. This was one information line on the Secure Rural Schools. However, for those counties on the online are aware, part of the Secure Rural Schools funding they keep, and part of the Secure Rural Schools funding they distribute. So the Legislative Services wanted to split up and to be made more clear on what money goes where. So this is more of a county reporting issue for line 18 and 18A. This past year, the legislature removed reporting for the House Bill 312. So many of you may remember that for the last 7 years, I guess, there's been special reporting for House Bill 312. The locals reported that on the last page of the annual road and street finance report, and LHTAC was responsible for reporting that to the legislature, all the information with that report. Ultimately, with all the new funding, that one piece of money or that one chunk of money doesn't need to stand out with its own reporting, and the legislature agreed to just combine it with the rest of the report. So the special House Bill 312 reporting is no longer required. However, LHTAC asked that the deferred maintenance costs self-reporting be kept in the report. So this is a number you report for your local agency on your 5 years deferred maintenance cost. It is helpful when asked by legislature or other interested folks how much funding the locals need for their systems, their local systems, to have this number for reporting. So we ask that this number stay on here. These changes will be final within the next week or two. ITD will publish it, and once they do, we will send it through an email that these updates have been made, but expect to see all of these in your December reporting when you log into the controller's website to submit your annual road and street finance report. And this is a great time to pause for questions. We'll have a transition to a different speaker after this. So I'm happy to answer any questions on the slides I presented. You can put it in the chat or unmute. Okay, we'll transition over to Kevin for the next part.
All right. As Layla said, I'm Kevin Kuther. I'm the design manager. This is as good as this gets. This is our 11th one of these, so this is as polished as we are. So I'm kind of excited because council approved that we advertise all the applications for bridge, rural, and urban this year. So these applications I'm going to talk about are the STBG funds. So STBG funds are for federal projects for design and construction. Most of the applications that we're going to talk about today are for classified roadways or roadways that are on the federal aid system. So collectors or arterials are above. We'll give you the heads up if it's an application that is not on a federal aid system. Most of these applications or projects require a local match of 7.34%, with the exception in this group of being off-system bridge. Off-system bridge is 100% federally funded. It's the first time in my LTAC career anyways, that the transportation bill has identified specific funds for off-system bridge. LTAC has always had an off-system bridge program, but it was LTAC administered. Now it is in the federal transportation bill. The timing of federal aid is what I kind of wanted to elaborate on. It is not fast. Usually it goes into the ITIP. Your project will go into the ITIP, and that's a 5 to 6 year program. That last year is typically 2 years, really. But between application, programming, design, those projects just take longer than you anticipate them taking. And then it's also, we have a program that we're trying to balance. And we've all seen what happens with rising construction prices. When LTAC doesn't have money, we just have programs. So when one project comes in over, something has to give. It's a net zero game each year. So you have to balance that program, and that usually draws the whole process out. I know I just wanted to make sure that everybody kind of understands when you get your project into the federal aid program, just kind of measure the expectations there. All of this work is completed with the help of consultants. So LTAC helps, negotiate with the consultants, but both the design and the construction of it are done with the help of consultants. So what is LTAC's role in this? We help you as the local make sure the project follows federal aid regulations. So there are 3 agencies in the state of Idaho that can administer federal aid. That is ITD, Ada County Highway District, and LTAC. And we do that because we have a stewardship agreement with ITD and FHWA. That agreement lists all the roles and responsibilities. There's over 50 of them on there, and there are no duplications in that effort. So I saw a question pass up from Lynn on a bridge. I think Scott must have got that. So well, what a good segue. We're right here on the right slide to help you out there. So federal aid urban, the applications are for populations 5 to 50,000. Federal aid rural are for areas less than 5,000, and federal aid bridge local and off system. So the thing to recognize with urban is it's not just the urban boundary, like not just the city limits proper. It is a smooth urbanized area or cluster around that urbanized or that urban area. So like on the picture there, we have Rexburg there, but it's the area around Rexburg as approved by the ITD and FHWA, the 2010 census. So again, this is the kind of a indicator of federal aid kind of is, I know it's 2022 and we have, we're 2 years past the last census, but the latest approved census is 2010. So a tool that can help you out is we've now on all of our GIS maps. So whether that's the crash map or the project map or the bridge map, they all have the same GIS interface. On that map, you can now select urbanized areas and it'll show you those on the map. And you can also select classified roadways. And that would then tell you if that bridge is on or off system. If you have a bridge that's on, in this case, the blue lines, that's a local bridge. And if it's not on there, that's an off system bridge. And if for any reason you have questions about which application, just get a hold of myself, Scott, anybody here at LTAC, and we'll help you out to make sure you apply for the correct one. Something we've done for all the applications this year is we've standardized the project estimating sheet, the 1150 form. This is the key to making this all work and to have the program be successful, each program, because like I said, we're chasing a rising construction costs in anything. And when an estimate's not put into the program with what is, accurate. I know everybody tries to put them in as accurate at the time. And then I said 5 years later, but we're trying to mitigate some of that. So we put descriptors in each line that shows you where the numbers should come from. So you should have an estimate of what the project construction cost will be. And then the application or this form will help you fill out the rest of it. So you know what the total project cost will be. We've added a 30% contingency amount to the bottom of that to try to help mitigate some of that rising cost and make it so these projects can be successful, because when the project comes in at $2 million and it really is going to cost $5 million to construct, so we don't have more money. It's just that something has to give in order to balance that all out. So those are hard conversations to have with sponsors along the way, and nobody likes to have them, but we all want the project to be successful. We've added rationale and examples or descriptions for each question. So we want you to have this money. We want every application to be as successful as possible. We're just trying to make it so everybody is getting compared apples to apples when they apply for a project, and they have the same equal opportunity to have maximum points when applicable on the application, I guess, applicable application. So the process right now, until today, I guess, yesterday, we were in October. So applications are out and advertised on our website. Those get submitted to LHTAC starting in December and ending in January. Those applications are evaluated and scored by council and staff in March. We submit to our council for approval, then we submit the approved list from our council to ITD for inclusion on the ITIP. That ITIP goes out for public comment through the summer, basically, and then December, it's usually December, it's plus or minus a month, somewhere, then ITD and FHWA approve the ITIP, and then your project gets a key number, and we can, then whatever year it's programmed, we can start work on that. And then we start this whole process over. Next October, we'll have another workshop tour. So once you have a project that's in the ITIP, when the year of your project is programmed comes up, you will get a state and local agreement for development. Once that agreement is executed, LHTAC will help select the consultant, negotiate, and then once that agreement is signed, we can start the design. It's important to note that during the design of the project, the invoices will be reviewed and then submitted to the sponsor. The sponsor then pays the consultant and submits that invoice for reimbursement from ITD. So once the project is designed, you will get another state and local for construction. That agreement will then have the rest of your remaining match included with that. So we'll have, the project is now, the unknowns are now known. We have the accurate estimate. We're going to advertise the project, and it'll spell out each duty and responsibility in that agreement. But after ITD bids the project, you will, as the sponsor, the ITD will pay the bills. So your match is already paid at that point. So then again, LHTAC will help and assist with the CEI selection negotiations, and then your project gets constructed. So I just wanted to try to spell out the difference between the design process and the construction process and who pays the bills. So if there's any questions, feel free to interrupt there and we'll get them answered. It can be a little bit confusing. Hearing none, we advance. Some useful tips and tricks for you on these applications is the highest point value for each application is in the project description. And it's important that you describe the project to a council member or somebody who is not from your area. Tell somebody, sell the project, tell somebody why it's important to you, your community. What makes this project important to you? Like I said, the person scoring it might not be familiar with your area at all, so you have to give an accurate description. You also get maximum points if you're involved in a multi-jurisdictional transportation group, if you have a pavement and sign management program, and if the project is supported in your transportation plan or your capital improvement plan. I want you to be creative. Like I said, sell the project, but utilize the rationale and the examples for every question that's on there. So the first application that we'll go into is the bridge application. So annually, the local bridge program has $7.8 million, approximately $7.8 million, and the off-system bridge has $6.7 million. So I'll hit you with this probably 3 times through the presentation, but the applications for the bridge program are due January 19th at 4:30 Mountain Time. So for the bridge application has both the local bridge and off-system bridge in there. The local is on system, and that has the 7.34% match. The off-system bridge requires no match. That's 100% funded. And if I showed you the maps and how you can toggle those different layers on and see, but if you have questions, give us a call. We'll make sure we can help you get the right application for whatever bridge you want to apply for. So all cities, counties, and highway districts are eligible for this program. It is 1 per jurisdiction, the local or off bridge. And here's that answer to that question earlier. A bridge is defined as over 20 feet in length and carries a public road. So the goal of all of these applications was to have them alternate every other year. It's been a while since we had all the applications and the programs freed up enough that we could take applications. So that's why you'll see they're all available this year, but hopefully we get back on a schedule. So the last time we accepted this application was 2020. Funding is limited to $3 million in federal aid of total project cost for this program. There's no double dipping with Leading Idaho Local Bridge. However, if you apply for Leading Idaho Local Bridge, you can apply for this program for the same bridge. It's just once we would spend federal aid on the project, then it would no longer be eligible. So like I said, it sits in that program for 3-4 years. If we haven't spent any federal aid and the Leading Idaho Local Bridge program gets additional funding, you could apply for that bridge also. We just don't want to mix the funds. But once federal aid is expended on the project, then it would no longer be eligible for that. And because the Leading Idaho Local Bridge program came into fruition in the past, we've only had this application open for replacements. But this year we thought it would be, the council approved that we open it up for replacements, rehabs, or preservations. So just make sure you're selecting what you need on the application when you're applying. Every piece of information that you need to fill out this section of the application comes from your inspection reports. Those are furnished by ITD. Back to you. If you do not have a copy of that, you can get a hold of Scott. Scott can help you locate that or use his connection, squeeze somebody and get you the right information. Again, I put Scott on this as the bridge guru because that's what he is. But if you have any questions ever and you can't get a hold of Scott, call one of us here. We will help you get what you need. Again, behind the scenes, what I would do is just go straight to Scott and ask him. So something that's new to this application this year is in the past, we've had field reviews recommended for each application because Leading Idaho Local Bridge is going on, and we didn't think that staff would have time to go look at each site of your applications. We're encouraging a desktop review. So if you coordinate with Scott, Scott can get you a desktop review, and then the maximum points would be incorporated, or maximum points would be available to you if you incorporated the results of that into your application. And then the idea is that we would take the the top ranking projects, whatever that number happens to be. And then we would go do coordinated site visits with each of those to confirm. So we would have probably somebody from the environmental side and from Bridge go make sure that your estimate and everything is accurate, and then more accurately score those applications, those highest ranking ones. Does that make sense to everybody? Good. We also updated the project cost estimating worksheet. So this is the most accurate information available at the time of that we published or had the council approve those applications. So, I mean, like I said, we're chasing a moving target, but when council approved this in September, this was, Scott put the most current information in there. So it's something that everybody, again, will be, if you use that sheet, everybody will be compared apples to apples on their bridge. It's important to note that with this application, approach work is limited to 10% of the project cost. This is for bridges mainly, and then like we're not gonna have build the roads to get there. It's just, this is just for the bridge itself, and the approach work is limited to 10%. If the project cost exceeds $3 million, maximum points will be awarded if you give me a detailed description of where the additional funds come from to finish the project. So if you apply for a $6 million bridge, you'll get the maximum points if you detail to us where the additional $3 million is coming from. So that, like I said, that way we don't have hard conversations or uncomfortable conversations to try to figure out where that additional funding is coming from, as long as it's spelled out in that application. Another resource we have available for you is we have, again, this is that GIS kind of base map that Matthew develops. They are, this is lists all bridges on the state and the local system, and you can step on one of those bridges and get some more details of anything. And again, if you can't find something or you need something, please get a hold of somebody and we will get you some help. So this is time number 2 here. Federal aid application, bridge applications are due January 19th at 4:30 Mountain. Postmark no later than January 16th. We need 2 copies and the signed original. We did that, and Megan we'll talk about it too, but we did it because we don't really have an idea of how many applications we are going to get for all these programs. And if you submit us 1 copy and we had to make additional copies to distribute to our council to score these, the administrative burden might be pretty great. So that's why we just said everybody include 2 copies plus the signed original. And if you have any questions, now would be a good time, because I think Scott's on there helping everybody answer. But if you have questions during the application process when you're filling it out, don't hesitate, call us. Like I said, we will get you the answer or help you, point you in the right direction anyways. Is there anything out there, Jake?
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Take 2 on my audio working. Looks like that's coming through now. Thank you for those who've typed questions in the chat box. We'll pause for a few seconds. If you want to unmute yourself in Zoom, you can now do that and ask any questions you may have about the federal aid bridge program. All right, without any questions, Kevin, I think we're ready to move on to the next application.
Okay, I'm trying to make that advance. Okay. The next application on the docket is the rural application. So this program has about $14 million annually. These applications are due January 12th at 4:30 Mountain. This application is eligible for all counties, highway districts, and cities with populations under 5,000, and therefore classified roadways. Again, this is arterials or collectors or above. The goal for this is to have this application available every other year. The last time we accepted this application was 2019. This is for projects with estimated costs of up to $2 million. Points will be deducted when applying for funds over the 2 million, but no projects over 5 million in construction and CE&I. So again, these applications are due January 12th at 4:30, postmarked no later than January 9th. And again, you must include 2 copies and the signed originals. I can pause for questions on this one. Okay. The last one you get me for here is the urban program. So these applications are due January 12th, which is the same time as the rural, because you determined that you probably wouldn't be applying for both of those things at the same time, so they're due the same time. It's a lot of same times in the same sentence. This program is administered a little different than the other ones. The funding for this program is managed by the Urban Balancing Committee. So LHTAC represents the 17 tweeners. Those are the populations between 5,000 and 50,000. Those 17 represent 26 local jurisdictions. So we have the one projects come in and the votes in the urban committee for funding and how that gets moved around. There are the 5 MPOs and LTAC in those meetings, having those conversations. So that's the only difference when I say there's a difference in how the program is administered. And again, it's important to note that the small urban areas, the population is based on the 2010 census, because that's the approved census at this point. It might change here in the near future, but right now when this application is published, that's the census that's approved by ITD and FHWA. So the urban application has 2 separate applications in it. One is for urban construction and the other one is for urban transportation plans. So for urban construction, it is 1 application per urban area, and the eligibility is based on recent funding. So we will contact you if you are eligible to submit an application for this. It is for use of roadway rehabs, reconstructions, new roadways, overlays, and chip seals. And the other application that's in here is the urban transportation plans. Again, these are in the same application. You're just going to apply for the one you're after. So this is for urban transportation plans. This is 1 application per urban area. It is again as defined by the U.S. Census Bureau. You have to have a roadway network analysis, capital improvement plan, and a roadway or asset management program in your transportation plan. Applications are due January 12th at 4:30 Mountain, postmarked no later than January 9th. You must include the 2 copies and the signed original. Is there any specific questions to this program?
Kevin, we had a question come in through the chat from Chelsea James. And by the way, if you all have questions, now would be a great time to throw them in the chat box or prepare to unmute yourself. The question from Chelsea was, can the federal aid rural or urban programs be used for new signals?
Yes, the answer would be yes. If it on a rural one would be maybe a little tougher, but yeah, I think they both are eligible for that. And the only reason I'm saying rural is I don't know if you would have the warrants in a lot of rural areas, but yes, if it's warranted, yes. Quick answer, yes.
And maybe, Kevin, we could tease signals are also an eligible improvement depending on the circumstance with another program we'll be talking about here.
Yeah, like I said, Brian will talk about safety, and we do a lot of signals with the safety program too. So
Thanks for the question, Chelsea. Any other questions that are out there right now?
Okay. So this is my last, kind of beat you over the head with it. The applications for rural and urban are due January 12th at 4:30, postmarked no later than January 9th. Application for bridge is due January 19th, postmarked no later than January 16th.
This is Chelsea. I had one more question before we move on.
All right, so
I
let's
think-
go ahead and take a
yeah.
break here.
Everybody need some coffee after that. Go charge up. So that was a long droning on, so charge up and come back in like, what do you think, 5 minutes, Jake?
I think 5 minutes will be great. So I'll pause the recording and we'll start back up here at 10 o'clock.
5 minutes.
All right, we are back here. Recording has resumed. We're gauging our return based on our own ability to get coffee. Hopefully y'all were able to grab something fresh too. We had a question come in before our break from Chelsea. It was a really good one that regarding the signal warrant analysis, if that is needed before submitting an application. And as Kevin talked about, signals could be eligible in both the federal aid urban or rural program as well as the LHTAC program. And the answer is yes, a signal warrant analysis is going to be needed before submitting to those programs. So great question there. With that, we'll move on to the LSIP program. And for that, we've got our Brian Wright. He'll go ahead and unmute and share a little bit more information about that program. Brian.
Thank you, Jake. Okay, here to talk about the LSIP program. There's me. What I look like in real life. So local highway safety improvement program, let's go. Overview of the program. It's a part of the HSIP funding. That's ITD's money from the feds. Funding did go up in this program. Like the other programs, we're now at $11 million a year, specifically to eliminate fatal and serious injury crashes on the local system. So any road on your local system that's had a fatal or serious injury crash is eligible. And unlike other applications, this one is just data driven. So there's no points for description or benefit to the community. We're just looking to reduce accidents, fatal and serious injury crashes. The application deadline, January 26th, next year at 4:30 Mountain. Okay, number 8, limits and exclusions is from last year, but we thought we'd leave it up for one more year. There's no local, or sorry, in-kind work allowed in the LSIP program. It wasn't a very popular option, but it just helps us to do everything in cash. We can settle faster. It makes the accounting easier with ITD. So we went ahead and took that out of the program. New this year is flashing signs for the group sign project. I don't know if any of you have ever participated in that. That's where we send you sign materials, post various traffic items that to your local jurisdiction. You install them with your own forces. We're having a problem getting these signs cleared through SHPO right now. So for the time being, we've decided to take them out of the program so we can stop doing the cultural reports needed to clear these. It's just not efficient for us to go around the state and do these cultural surveys at about $10,000 each to send $20,000 to $30,000 worth of signs to a local. We're hopeful we can get that back in a year or two. We're making progress with SHPO. So hopefully number 9 disappears in the next year or two. Question, you want to wait on that? We'll wait. Oh, okay. So these are stats from the crash report. The LSIP program uses a rolling 5-year crash window. Right now we're in 17 through 21. And you can see a pretty steady trend, except dipping in 20 because people stopped driving, we're all at home. But when we went back to work in 21, the crashes went right back up. So the other table shows the state, the local system split. You can see about 40% of the fatal crashes, 60% of the serious injury crashes, meaning someone probably left in an ambulance, was very injured, happened on the local system. So that's where we kind of arrived at that 50-50 split agreement with ITD. You can see the averages are pretty consistent. Also want to note that these are crashes. A crash is an event. It does not matter how many people are in the car. So you will often see more fatalities in the state than we have fatal crashes. And for the LSIP application, we use crashes. as the convention. Hey, eligible jurisdictions. If you've had a fatal or serious injury crash in your jurisdiction, you are eligible in the last 5 years. So I'm going to go through these slowly. We've got 6 slides all over the state for each ITD district, and hopefully you can find your jurisdiction on there. Some of these are already in the area, so hopefully you were at the workshop and saw these slides already. And you wanted to see it again, so you came to this one. Oh. Okay, technical difficulties. We are stopping at 2. We'll look into getting those back up. These are also on our website, and we do try and notify a handful of jurisdictions in each district every year to make sure. Apologize for not having those. Like I said, they're on the website. For the most part, if in 5 years you've probably had a crash, that's unfortunate that that's true, but you're probably eligible. So we'll follow up on that. Okay, where can you find out more about the LSIP program? On LTAC's website up top, programs, and down in that right column, you'll find many of our programs, but this one is also down there, LSIP. And if you click on that link, you'll find the application, helpful documents, and the crash map, all things you'll need to complete this application. Looks like Jake just sent out the link to the list of eligible jurisdictions. Thanks, Jake. Okay, so here's the application. Because this one's data driven, like I said, we do use a spreadsheet, and that's where we'll determine your cost benefit score, and I'll go over that later. But also in the application, you'll find a right-of-way certification. We do allow right-of-way acquisition in the LSIP program. We just need to know up front if that's something you're going to be doing, so we can appropriately account for the cost and allow time in our development plan to acquire that right-of-way. We usually add an extra year for right-of-way. Then you'll see some standard Fed documents and a cost summary, and I'll go over those. Okay, first things, if you need to find an eligible crash, which you'd like to address. So the best way to do that, if you don't personally know of one, is to go to the crash map on LTAC's website, and I'll walk you through how we could find a crash in your jurisdiction using that ArcGIS map. So here's the whole state, all the accidents in that 5-year window, every system, ITD, local system. That's obviously way too much information to do anything with, so we got to filter that down. So there's this pin up in the upper left corner. If you click on that, it'll pop out an expanded menu. And we need to move over a couple to this funnel. And that's where we'll start getting down to the information that's pertinent to you. So there's 4 options here. For this application, you're going to be either city or rural road jurisdiction. The top 2 are boundaries, administrative boundaries or county boundary that include all crashes in that boundary. So those aren't going to be useful when trying to figure out how many crashes happen in your jurisdiction. So in this example, we'll choose Bonneville County for a rural road jurisdiction in eastern Idaho. And there's all the crashes in Bonneville County, still a lot of information. So we need to filter that down one more time to get to what we're looking for. So move over one menu to this check box menu and filter our crashes down to fatal and serious injury. Now you can see, so each one of those dots represents a crash and potentially an eligible project under this program. So you can go around the map, step on them. It'll tell you when the crash happened, some limited information about the crash and the contributing factor. That'd be a good way to find a crash you'd like to address in this program. In there twice. Okay, this is some information from the ITD crash report. I just thought it would be interesting. You can see for fatal crashes that alcohol and drug involvement are way up there, which makes some intuitive sense. It's hard to say. We talk about all the time here. If a safety improvement is done and the cause was alcohol or drug related, would it have made a difference? I don't know, but you'd like to think it does. So any way we can make the road safer is good. The other crash, or the other chart just goes to show you that of the fatal crashes, the overwhelming majority is male. And I just found that interesting because I think I'm a pretty good driver, but the graph says otherwise. Okay, so we found the crash. Now we have to figure out what you want to do to address that crash, how to make less crashes happen at that location in the future. The best resource for this is going to be the CMF Clearinghouse. It's a great website that lists many known ways to reduce crashes in the future. So if you have a specific item in mind, like traffic signal, you could put that in the search box and just go straight to there. If not, we can go through the whole list. It's a long one and I'll do a quick example. As you can see, there's a lot of categories here of different things you could do on a road to increase safety, depending on who you're trying to increase it for. We'll go with delineation. And there's one subcategory of pavement markings. So these are all the studies that have been done on different road conditions and crash types related to pavement markings, specifically supplemental intersection shaped pavement markings. So that would, to me, means turn arrows, delineation, things like that in intersection. You're going to want to pick the highest CMF that applies to your crash type. That rural angle, rural all, urban rear end, it would depend on where you're at. Okay, the cost estimate, like Kevin said, we tried to standardize this as best as possible. It's an ITD form. Basically, if you can tell us the cost to construct your project, we've given you some standard percentages of that number that you can put in every other category to get a really good project estimate. We do review every one of these on the LSIP application and often make revisions just because we want to make sure we get enough program to get project, possible to award a bid in a few years from now. So oftentimes we'll go up and put more contingency in there. Here's an example. We went over the limit. The current limit is $1.5 million of LSIP funds on your project, regardless of how big the project is. So in this case, we would have had to call and let you know, we're 68,000 over. Is that okay? That's what we think it's going to cost, yay or nay. So here's that spreadsheet I was talking about. This is the most important part of the application because this is where you're going to figure out if your project has enough cost benefit to get awarded. At the top, some basic information. If we have questions, who you'd like us to call, ask about it. Line number 1 is a systemic improvement, and that just means if you had a crash at a location, are there other locations in your jurisdiction that look the same or kind of the same that we could also do a safety improvement at? The example, the best one I've had so far is in Bonner County. At railroad crossings, we had 2 fatal accidents at 2 different crossings. So the safety improvement was to put in radar activated crossbucks, the yellow circle links at you when you're coming towards the railroad. And then if there was pavement at the crossing, put thermoplastic pavement markings down. So the 2 crossings were eligible and we ended up trying to do 18. I think we ended up at 12 because of construction prices, but that's a good systemic improvement, 12 crossings in Bonner County. Boxes 2 and 3, those are your fatal and serious crashes. One of those has to have a 1 in it to be eligible for this program. Once you've picked a site, if there are other accidents of less severity at the location, go ahead and put those in too. This would be like an intersection. If you go on any intersection with a traffic signal, you're going to see a lot of accidents of lesser severity in that 5-year window. Go ahead and put them all in there. They do count, but they don't make you eligible for the application on their own. So the score is based on how much you reduce crashes, how long that improvement will last, and how much it costs. The spreadsheet will do all that math for you and come up with a cost benefit ratio. That moves from year to year depending on the pool that you're competing against, but a good historic target is somewhere around 17. So if your project's above 17, that's probably a good viable project. Below 17, you're going to want to look at adjusting costs, improvements, something to get that benefit ratio higher. Okay, so once again, the deadline is January 26th next year, 4:30 Mountain. Electronic submittals only for this one. If you could compile everything into one PDF, we'd sure appreciate it. But if not, we'll take several PDFs and that'll work too. Applications at ltac.org for you to submit those. Are there any questions on the LSIP program? Okay, Eric, I see, I'll read that on the new 1150. Line 1 is 5% of line 15. Is 5% total of 15A and B, or line 15A or 15B? That's a good question. Can I get back to that? Okay, I'm gonna go back. So yeah, we're meeting 15A. That's good. So of that construction cost, we're just trying to give you good markers to back calculate the cost for everything else. We've already approved this one, so I don't think we can change it and it's out there, but We'll go ahead and note that if they come in. Okay, any other questions on LSIP? And if you think of something later, I mean, we're here, you can call me, and, you know, Kevin, anyone at LTAC, will try and get you an answer as fast as possible. If you want to have me look at your application before the deadline, I mean, I'd be happy to help you if you want to know if there's some ways you can improve it or things like that. So just let me know.
Yeah, before you move on, Brian, just to give people a little bit more time if they are typing up their answers, this is a seemingly complex application, but you did a great job of walking them through the tools that we have available online. And so this is just a reminder that this video is going to be posted on our website online so that you guys will be able to rewatch this. The tools really are helpful to have someone. I'm not an engineer, and I feel like I could even be able to put forward a decent application. So you can get a good first stab at it. But of course, Brian and our engineers here at LTAC are also going to be available for technical assistance should you need it. I bought more time. No more questions came in. So Brian, let's go ahead and move on to the next one.
Okay. Oh, I should have been on that side. Sorry.
Question from Annalisa Noble. Will the slide deck be available? Yes, absolutely. We'll get that posted right alongside the video.
Okay, I'm quickly going to talk about TAP, which is the Transportation Alternatives Program. There's not an application out right now, but we want people to know it's alive and well. So we'll go real quick through this. We just did an application last year. So the goal is to try and do one every other year. That's why you're not seeing one out right now, but a quick summary of the TAP program would be that it's not for cars. So anything that involves bicycles, pedestrians, pedestrian improvements, those types of things. It's a great funding source for that. I mean, traditionally, those are hard to fund at the local level because they just don't have revenue and they get pushed down priority wise with other things. Another funding increase. So now we're up to 15 million every 2 years, which is good because, again, these are popular projects. They're usually well applied for. Last year, we got 42 applications. In the middle, in between opening those applications and ranking them, we got the increase in funding and found some savings from previous years, closing out a lot of projects. LTAC just took over this program for ITD, so we're doing a lot of cleaning of the books and ended up with $21 million. So while it wasn't our intention, we ended up awarding all 42 projects. So sometimes you're in the right place at the right time, and that's what happened in January. So look for that application to come out again in the fall of next year. And if you have any questions, please contact Amanda Lamont. She's the TAP program administrator here at LTAC. She'll help you however she can. Are there any questions on TAP? Or let's see your child ped piece. Leila's going to talk a little bit about child ped as well.
Yeah, just quickly, as you may recall, we had the children pedestrian safety funding in previous years. 2 years was that $2 million a year for 2 years that we split with ITD out of the surplus eliminator funds. Then we had a gap. Last year, the legislature approved $10 million in funding, one-time funding for that program. There was over $8 million of unfunded projects last year, and not sure what happens this year with the legislature. That is why there's not an application open right now. We don't have funding. We don't like to ask you guys to do the work of an application. If you were unsuccessful last year, I would encourage you to get your scoring feedback and figure out if there's some improvements you could make in case there is another application. And for you, Chelsea, to confirm, TAP application will not be accepted this year. That is correct. So as of right now, no TAP and no child ped for the current year applications.
Yeah, Chelsea, I think the idea there was just to also just let you guys know that that program is coming up next year in case you want to start thinking about it earlier or work on some project ideas. Okay, there's no more questions about TAP or child ped. I will move on real quick there to loaner equipment. So LTAC has a few items in our inventory for the locals to use. Talk about the first one would be the radar traffic counters. So these have been around for a few years now. We have 5 sets. We like to keep them placed throughout the state if possible, and just kind of coordinate the handoff between local jurisdictions if possible. I'm gonna keep these things working around the state. They've been great for speed and volume, and I've talked to a lot of locals about traffic counts, and that's overwhelmingly what they want to know is speed and volume on the road system. So this is the best tool we have to collect that data. You can set it up outside of the traffic way. Don't have to get in the road. This is especially useful on these high-speed rural roads when they're 50 miles an hour and people are usually going like 70. You just don't have to get out there or do traffic control, or maybe put the flashers on and park in the lane and hope no one hits the truck. So with these, we also have solar panels available, and those are great if you want to do a count longer than 2 days. The batteries in these counters last about 2 days, then they die, and of course it stops. So if you're going to count somewhere, I'd recommend you count longer than 2 days to smooth out some of that lumpiness that can happen, especially if there's events in the area. But you leave that solar panel on there and you can count for 2 weeks continuous if you like, and it's really easy to take that long continuous file and generate a report. So we are available to help with these. If you're not near our office, we can do a lot over the phone. We have some how-to guides from JMAR, who was the manufacturer of these counters. If possible, or we're in the area, we can come out and help you set one up in the field. That just takes a little more coordination depending on how far you are from the office. The other item we have are tube counters. I've never set one of these up, but we have 4 of them. So really the only reason you'd want to use a tube counter is if you're more comfortable using them and would like to continue using them, or you're looking for axle classification, meaning you want to know what types of trucks are driving down your road. I've not met anyone that wants to know that yet. There are reasons you would want to know that, but it's been speed and volume. I want to know speed and volume on my roads. So if you want a tube counter, I'll still help you however I can. I could probably figure out how to set one up if you don't know how to. So just give us a call or an email and let us know, and we'll work with you to get that arranged. Other items we have the laser speed gun. If for some reason you'd rather stand out there and collect speed data manually, then you could also put up the radar counter and just let it do it for you. Your choice. Safety edge for an asphalt paver. When we design and bid projects here, that you'll always see that on our typical section, but if you pave with your local or your own equipment, you may not have a safety edge. You'll just have a hard 90-degree edge on that paver. And what this is a triangular piece that makes a little gentler transition from the edge of the asphalt into that shoulder. So if you go over it with your tire, you're not hooked on a sharp edge, you can get back up on the road a little easier. We did have retroreflectivity testing kits, working on getting more of those. And we took signed coupons and doled them down to about the minimum retroreflectivity per MUTCD, so you could hold that up to a sign and make an easy visual comparison, as opposed to using a retroreflectometer, which is an expensive piece of equipment that we do not own. At this point, I don't think we have any plans to own one of those because of it. It's a delicate piece of equipment. It's hard for us to move around the state, and it's expensive. Not on here, but available and have talked about at several of the workshops would be pedestrian counting things or items. We don't lead that effort. If you would like to know more about that, we ask you contact the Idaho Walk Bike Alliance, but they do have a ped counter, and it's a ped counter / bicycle counter. It uses a tube to count the bike on like a pathway. And we also have something like a trail camera, motion activated. You can set it up somewhere, take photos, motion activated, and do pedestrian counts, things like that if you're interested. Like I said, if you're interested in that, please contact Idaho Walk Bike Alliance, and they can work with us if they have more questions. If you're interested in any of those things, you can also just email LTAC at ltac.org and say, I'm interested, what do I do? And we'll get back to you and let you know the next steps. Lastly, if there's anything out there you think would be useful in this inventory that LTAC could acquire, we'd love to know. And if it makes sense, we would look into getting that. So I'm ready for all the awesome ideas right now. Or later at LTAC, at LTAC.org. If there are no more questions, that's the end of my time. And up next will be Megan to talk about LRIP. Oh, there's me.
All right, morning to all the friendly looking black boxes out there. Again, I'm Megan Couts, the Construction Engineering and LRIP Manager here at LTAC. I've been in the construction role here for about 8 years. I know I've worked with quite a few of you in that realm. Over the last year, as Layla's been transitioning into her administrator role, I've started to help with the LRIP program. In March, I took over administration of that program. So that's what I'll talk to you about today. So the source of this funding, we take $5 million in federal aid rural funds and exchange those with ITD for $4 million in state fund grants. So that exchange rate's 80 cents on the dollar. What that does for us is that washes the federal aid requirements off of that money, allows you to spend that money a lot more freely. The rules or the sideboards of this program, these grants are available to rural jurisdictions only. I'll show you in a little bit here. You can verify your classification as a rural jurisdiction. We've got a list posted to our website. Local agencies must be collecting taxes or have an alternate source of funding. Grant funds cannot be used for employee wages, equipment reimbursement, or engineering fees. The one exception to paying engineers with these funds is if you get a transportation plan grant, we would expect you to hire an engineer and pay that engineer with these grant funds. So the one thing to remember with this is you can't pay yourselves with this money. State procurement rules must be followed, just like with your other projects. And these applications are scored by a combination of our council and staff. 4, technically 5 eligible uses of these funds. The first and most popular are construction projects. This accounts for about 75% of those grant funds. You can apply for up to $100,000. Needs to be put towards a road or bridge project. Keep in mind with these that your project can have drainage and pedestrian facilities, but it can't be exclusively drainage or pedestrian facilities. So don't just apply for sidewalk, but if your roadway project has some sidewalk on it, that's okay. A subset of the construction projects category is a federal aid match category. So you can apply for up to $100,000 towards a federal aid project that requires local match. We reserve a minimum of $200,000 in this category each year. And I can tell you last year, nobody applied for it. So this is definitely an underutilized category. Keep this in mind as you move forward in your federal aid projects. The next is signs. Where Brian and Kevin can't get you lighted signs, if you're a rural jurisdiction, we can get you lighted and flashing signs in this grant program. So you can apply for up to $30,000 towards sign replacement for warning and regulatory signs and pavement markings. Next, transportation plans. So it's important to our council that your transportation plan be kept current. And as you apply for things like construction grants, you'll notice that that's actually a scoring criteria. You can apply in this category for a new plan if your jurisdiction's never had a plan up to $50,000. Plan updates are funded up to $30,000. And this category accounts for about 15% of this program's grant funds. The last and kind of the unique outlier category is emergency funding. Excuse me. So we reserve $400,000 annually for emergency grant funds. You can apply for up to $100,000 towards an active emergency. So these funds can't be used towards mitigation projects. If you've got a hillside or a bridge that you're really concerned is going to go, but it hasn't yet, we couldn't use these funds towards that. Once that hillside slides or that bridge goes out, that would be the time to apply. And this application is open year round, anytime. How to apply. So on our website, ltac.org, programs, LRIP, we've got our 24 application packet posted. It's posted in a couple different ways. The first link that you'll see towards the middle of the page is the entire application packet. So that's everything you could ever want to know about every grant in this program. I would encourage you maybe not to use that application. It's a lot to digest. If you know what kind of grant you're going for, I would encourage you to just pull that application. So in the bullets towards the center of the page, you can see the different applications: construction, federal aid match, signs, and transportation plans. On this page, you can also see towards the bottom, a list where you can verify if you are considered a rural jurisdiction, and also if you're on the federal or the fiscal year 24 construction and federal aid match hiatus list, which I forgot to mention. So if you get a construction grant, you'll be put on a hiatus list for the next year, just meaning that you can't get a construction grant 2 years in a row. So if you're unsure if you received a construction grant last year, check this hiatus list and make sure that you're not included there. A couple things that are new this year. Kevin already touched on, we're requesting additional copies from years past. So the LRIP program, we get between 80 and 90 applications a year. So again, that administrative burden of making copies for our council and staff is pretty heavy. We're asking that you submit 4 copies this year. And we're also requiring a physical jurisdiction address. So a lot of you operate off of PO boxes, which usually works great. In our case, when we send you your grant checks, we FedEx those checks, and FedEx requires a physical jurisdiction address. So in this case, when we're ready to send your check, we'll have that information ready. Also new this year, we reformatted the application checklist. Historically, it was sometimes difficult to tell in a box where we were looking for an answer from you and where somebody else was going to take care of that response. So what we've done is we've grayed out any boxes that we're not looking for you to respond to. Excuse me. You'll see a fillable form in any boxes that we need an answer from you. The thing to remember here is if you can't provide a response, we didn't intend you to. Also new, a couple things related to the road and street report. We don't actually get physical copies of your road and street report like we have historically. We just get a big data dump from ITD. So on line 65, where you report funds specified and saved for future projects, we're just asking now that you provide a list of those projects with values that we can verify. We're also asking that you let us know if you've amended your road and street report. We found last year that in that data dump, if a road and street report was amended, we didn't necessarily get that data, which affects your scoring. So if you let us know here that you've amended your road and street report, we can go out and look for that amended data and make sure that we're scoring your application based on the latest information. T2 training, a question that we've always had in the past, you get credit for your full-time staff that's taken T2 credits. We have all of the transcripts for T2 classes taken. The thing that we don't have is information on who is currently employed in your organization. So what we're asking is for a list of current full-time employees that you're asking credit for that have taken classes. Key points. So a few things that we noticed last year, tips and tricks, if you will. Keep in mind that involvement in multi-jurisdictional groups is really important. Over and over, we would see folks just attend a multi-jurisdictional group in November, right before applications are due. So make sure you're keeping this on your radar year round. We ask for up to 3 letters of support for your project. What we really mean is submit 3 letters of support. If you submit any less than 3, you sacrifice up to half of the points available for that question. Pavement and sign management inventory. This scores best if that information, if that inventory is kept current. That's not to say that the entire inventory needs to be updated in the year, but keep in mind that you should have at least a few of your road segments, a few of your sign segments, sections updated in time for the application, so a reviewer can see that you're actively working through that inventory. We require a transportation plan and a capital improvement plan. Keep in mind, these are 2 different documents. So don't just turn in the cover sheet of your transportation plan for both of these questions. Your capital improvement plan should be an ever-evolving, a living list of projects being taken off as they're completed and projects being added as they're needed. Don't resubmit an unedited prior year's application that was not successful. If you were not successful and didn't score well in the past, the likelihood of not scoring well in turning in that same application is high. If you're in that boat, give me a call. We can go through maybe what didn't go so well in the scoring in the past, and we can work through some ideas to maybe improve that application going forward. Answer each question. Before you turn your application in, please make sure that you check that each question has an answer. Finally, repeat project applications score higher. So if you've submitted an application on a project in the past and you resubmit on that same project, you get points for that. So in this case, persistence pays off. Project closeout. So once you've been awarded a grant and you've been able to complete your project, we ask you for what we call a project document summary. It's really high level project information that allows us to close out your project. We ask that you submit before and after photos with that form, and that your mayor or chairman sign that form for you. One thing to keep in mind, in 22, our council adopted a policy that requires LRIP funds to be spent 3 years after their award. If those funds aren't spent, the council actually reserves the right to request those funds back. So make sure that you're really keeping it a priority to spend these funds. Extensions are still allowed. The one change is, I know if you worked with Layla historically, a quick email could get your extension granted. The council's after something a little bit more formal now. So we would look for a letter on your letterhead, again, signed by your mayor or chairman, letting us know maybe why it's taken a little bit longer to spend the funds and how much longer you think you need to get those funds spent. Timelines. So like we talked about, the application is posted now. It's due December 1st by 3 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Mountain in our office. If you're mailing those, the postmark date is the same, December 1st. I'll take those applications to our December council meeting. I'll send council and staff home with those to score. I'll present scores to the council in March for their consideration and hopefully approval. After that March meeting, I'll be able to let you know if you were awarded or if you were unsuccessful in these grants. Keep in mind that even though you'll find out next spring that you were successful, those funds won't become available until the fall of next year. So just like this year, if you have an FY23 grant, we still don't have that money yet. We hope to soon. If you're ready for your FY23 grant and you want to get on the waiting list, I've got a list going, so you could shoot me a quick email and I can get you on that. Think you want to take the question, Jake?
Yeah, so you did already mention the timeline for expenditure of LRIP grants, but Chelsea James did have a question in the chat here, specifically asking about the federal aid match program. What is the timeline that money would need to be spent on that?
Great question. So a few timelines tied to that federal aid match. You have to have been awarded the project already. It has to be within 2 years of construction, and it would have to be spent within 3 years of us awarding that grant to you. Again, stuff comes up. I know things happen. If we need to talk extension, we can definitely do that. Anything else? All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, Megan. We're going to transition to the final phase, the home stretch of our workshop here. Layla's going to come back and share a little bit about our T2 program.
Thanks, Jake. So we do have the T2 training program at LHTAC. It is training for the local roadway employees. That's the goal or our target audience. Some changes over the past year. Dan Kuntz is now the director of that program. He's in the picture there on the left. He's one of our federal aid engineers, but will be doing managing the T2 program about 50% of his time. He's already been working hard to bring in some new classes and instructors. So hopefully you guys are seeing some of those improvements and additions. The T2 program does have an advisory board. The advisory board is made up of local road employees. It's a lot of road director type folks, and they help provide the direction for the program as well as guide us on new classes or programs to bring in. Classes are offered about 10 months a year. Really, probably within the next year, it'll become the full year with the addition of more virtual options that we've been able to bring in. We do know that in-person classes are the preferred. We do evaluations and surveys, and we hear that loud and clear. So those aren't going away, but we will try to be bringing in more virtual options. Doing so allows us to leverage the relationships we have with other T2 or LTAP centers across the country and bring in some of those instructors. The classes cover a wide variety of topics: safety, professional development, and then the largest group being the construction and maintenance techniques courses. Currently, there are 2 recognition levels within the T2 Center. The first is the Rhodes Scholar Program. It's about 80 hours of instruction. And then following that is the Roadmaster Program, about another 80 hours of instruction. When your roadway employees meet either of those goals, complete those programs, someone from our staff will come recognize them in person, providing them their certificates and awards for the completion of those programs. Through the advisory board, we have been developing a leadership program. It's about halfway done, I'd say right now. 4 classes have been developed and 2 more are coming this next year. The leadership program is aimed at anyone within your organization. You don't have to have completed the Rhodes Scholar or Roadmaster program. It actually came from the recommendation of the advisory board. We had a road director who was nearing retirement and wanted to help develop the employees he had to take over for him. So it's a great program for any of your up and coming leaders in the organization. The T2 Center is funded partially by federal funds, and the state matches that amount of federal money. There was a big increase with the new IIJA bill, about $100,000 more a year in base funding. So we are actively looking at ways to invest that money that most quickly and readily benefits the local roadway employees. Part of the T2 Center is we have a spot on the State Transportation Innovation Council, or the STIC. And through that, we have applied successfully for funding to host workshops in the state. With that funding, we are able to pay for the travel cost of your employees attending the program. So mileage, hotel, and meals. The last one we held was the low-cost bridge preservation and maintenance treatments course down in the Treasure Valley. And again, the money helped pay for the employee travel costs to that workshop. We do have some funding left over from that grant, and it was so successful that we are looking at having some follow-up workshops in other parts of the state, North Idaho and East Idaho. Also through the T2 Center, we host the Innovation Award. Really, we call it the Problem Solving Award. We know that that's something you guys are always working on, always doing, is solving problems in your organization. We just want to share those and promote those to other agencies, help them cut out some of the steps to get to the end and get to that solution. We've adjusted the timeline for that award to more closely match up with the National Build a Better Mousetrap Award. So look for information on that coming out. The schedule for the classes, we post twice a year, release dates twice a year for that. The fall schedule is still posted. There's a PDF. This PDF is on our website, and you can see there's still classes coming up throughout the last couple of months of the season, our training season. Again, we also will have virtual classes that we will continue to look for adding some of those into the winter. There are some virtual training opportunities as well. Again, I mentioned using instructors from other LTAP or T2 centers. And then through Federal Highway, there's a Center for Local Aid Support, and they also offer classes. We do have national partners, and with that, there is some free training available. The ATSA courses are not free. However, the other three national partners on the screen are still offering some free classes for local agency employees. So if you log into those sites from our website, there are codes that will help you get some free training. Those classes used to be a couple $100, $400, $500 a piece. So it's a great opportunity to get some additional training. If you need help matching up classes from the national partners with classes within the Rhodes Scholar and Roadmaster program, you can call and we can help identify what classes would match up the best. Again, some new T2 contacts for you. Dan Kuntz, the director, and Nancy Zebarth, the class coordinator. It's a great time to start requesting classes for this next season in the spring. I always say if you can get 12 people together to commit to a class, we can bring that class wherever makes the most sense for you. Nancy, I know, is working on the schedule now. So again, a great opportunity to make those requests. Any questions on the T2 Center before we wrap up? And then just to finish up, everything we've talked about today is available on our website. The programs tab, it's the third one over at the top, will have all the information on the funding programs. And each of the funding programs we discussed has its own landing page with background information about the program, the application, previous award winners, et cetera. So definitely take a look at the website if you're interested in more information on the funding programs. And I assume since you're on this call, you get our emails, but if there's somebody out there who doesn't already receive our emails, I can't stress strongly enough that it is the best way to keep in touch with LTAC and then receive information, especially on funding programs. So if you scroll to the bottom of the webpage, you will see the button to subscribe to LTAC emails. When you select that, these are the questions we're asking. It's not too much information. Really, we'd like to know where you are in the state and then what information you're interested in learning about. The one I tell everyone to do is if you do nothing else, subscribe for the funding news. Again, we will share information on the federal discretionary grant programs. Often our other partners within the state, Parks and Rec or Idaho Office of Emergency Management, will share information, funding opportunities through their agencies, and we will always share it through our email, through this page, so our MailChimp page. So please go subscribe if you didn't already. And with that, that's the end of our presentation. Again, we're all here. We're happy to answer any other questions that may have popped up. You can unmute, I believe, or type a question in the chat box. All of the information, again, shared today is available on our website. The recording and the slide deck will be posted to the website probably this afternoon. Let's see, what is that? Any of the programs? Chelsea had a question, one final question. Can any of the programs other than the federal aid match be stacked? I think what you're asking is if funding can be combined. We have had a few projects where we have combined funding. That would probably need to be a conversation, understanding your program and your project and what opportunities we have. So maybe shoot Kevin an email or give us a call afterwards and we can talk through the specifics of your question. Again, feel free to reach out to any of us regarding the programs we discussed today or any other LTAC questions. Thank you all for attending and giving up your morning.